In today's session, we are going to see how this change is impacting salaried class of people. We are going to see how it is impacting long-term capital gains, the taxable part of it, how it is changing online gaming, earnings on online gamings, and we are going to look at certain aspects which has or rather which might have some now. After the session is over, we are also going to hold a question and answer session, so please keep posting those questions. Now, firstly, we are going to see what change has been made in this budget which are going to impact the salaried class of people. Firstly, the big announcement that was made in respect of tax savings, slab rate changes, the rebates, and everything that has to do with the new tax regime. So there is no impact of these changes in the old tax regime. But to bring more people into the fold of the new tax regime, it has been made attractive by making certain uh, offerings to common people, right? In our estimate, in our filing system, what we have seen is very few people are opting for the new tax regime as compared to the old tax regime, because under the new tax regime there are no tax benefits available if you are making certain investment. However, in today's after this year's budget, our finance minister has estimated around 40% of the people will be opting for new tax regime. Now, what are these changes that has been made under the new tax regime which is going to make it so attractive that there will be a shift, a huge shift in number of people who are opting for it? Firstly, the new tax regime has been made default tax regime. Previously, the old tax regime used to be the in last year or year prior to that, you will be seeing that whether I have opted for new tax regime or not, right? So the new tax regime was always an option. Now the situation has been reversed. Now the new tax regime is the default tax regime, and the old tax regime will need to be opted for. The impact it is going to create is whenever the next year starts, that is from 1st April 2023 onwards, we are in the habit of selecting the tax regime, number one, and we are in the habit of selecting or rather declaring all the tax saving investment. Now, if I had missed the opportunity, or rather, if I had missed the opportunity to declare all my tax saving instruments or investment, in that case, old tax regime would have been selected by default. Now, the next in the next year's next financial year, the new tax regime will be selected by default if you are not actively selecting the old tax regime. Therefore, there can be there will be a situation if the new tax regime has been selected by default. In that case, during the year, you will not be having any option to declare any tax investment, right? So be very mindful of that, and I would suggest do a little calculation which tax regime might be beneficial for you before selecting the tax regime, keeping this thing in mind that if new tax regime is selected in the middle of the year, you will not be able to, number one, change the regime, and number two, if you are making any sort of tax saving investment in the middle of the year, you will not be able to declare that, right? So this is a very big change that is going to happen. uh, in its nature, it seems like a very small change, but it has a grave repercussion in respect of tax savings and everything. Secondly, under the new tax regime, now standard deduction has been introduced. Previously, standard deduction was only available under the old tax regime. But now, in this budget, standard deduction of 50,000 has also been extended in new tax regime. Thirdly, therefore, continuing on the standard deduction, this is a very welcome change because bringing the standard deduction will actually take your tax saving to a little further. Thirdly, there are new slabs or other slab structure of the new tax regime has been amended, right? If you remember, in the old tax regime system, it sounds very odd to say this, but pre-budget new tax regime, the slab rates were apart by 2.5 lakh rupees, and tax rate was apart by 5%. Right now, the tax rate has mostly been carried forward from the pre-budget new tax regime. However, the slab rates has been tweaked. As of now, the new slab rate for the new tax regime, which is post budget, is from 0 to 3 lakh rupees of earning or other taxable earning. The rate of tax will be 0. From 3 lakh to 6 lakh rupees the earning, the tax rate will be 5%. From 6 lakh to 9 lakh rupees of taxable earning, the rate of tax will be 10%. From 9 lakh to 12 lakh rupees, the rate of tax will be 15%. From 12 to 15 lakh rupees of taxable earning, the rate of tax will be 20%. And beyond that, beyond 15 lakh rupees, the rate of tax will be 30%. Now, how all these are going to impact the tax computation, that we are going to take a look a little bit later. We are going to have a comparative analysis of the old tax regime and new tax regime pre and post budget. Another big change that has been made, that is the rebate under section 87A has been increased from 7 lakh rupees to 5 lakh rupees. Also, the rebate amount has also been changed from 12,500 rupees to 25,000 rupees. Now, how these are going to be translated? Firstly, uh, in the new tax regime, the pre-budget new tax regime, if you had earned any income which is not exceeding 5 lakh rupees, there was this rebate of 87A, section 87A, under which uh, if your income is not crossing 5 lakh rupees, then the amount of tax computed or 12,500 rupees, whichever is lesser, was given to you as rebate, and by virtue of it, you are not supposed to pay any taxes. Now, this has created a lot of confusion for people who thought that if I am earning an income of up to 5 lakh rupees, I need not pay any taxes. Technically, which is true. But I am not able to pay any taxes. That is not entirely correct, because tax liability will be there if your income is more than 2.5 lakh rupees. But you are exempt from paying the taxes. You are excused from paying the taxes by virtue of giving you a tax rebate. Now, this 87A rebate has been extended under post budget new tax regime. Under this, if your income is not crossing 7 lakh rupees, if it is up to 7 lakh rupees, or rather taxable income is up to 7 lakh rupees, in that case, the tax amount or rupees 25,000, whichever is lesser, shall be given to you as tax rebate. Right. Now, here lies another twist, or rather uh, good news for the tax-paying people. Now, in its reality, it says that 7 lakh rupees income, up to 7 lakh rupees of income, I need not pay any taxes by virtue of a rebate. However, these 7 lakh rupees of taxable income will be computed after giving you a standard deduction of 50,000 rupees. Right. So if your income in reality is not crossing 7.5 lakh rupees, that is, gross income is not crossing 7.5 lakh rupees, in that case, your after standard deduction of 50,000 rupees, your total taxable income will come to 7 lakh rupees, and therefore you are excused from paying any taxes. Second point over here is that under the new tax regime, you can still avail NPS, right? National Pension Scheme, if it is paid through the employer, right? So if you can opt to pay NPS through your employer, in that case, this 7 lakh rupees of gross earning can go even higher, right? So if you are planning carefully, you can save a lot of taxes by utilizing these two deductions. And thirdly, the most important thing, now this will be targeted towards people who are earning an income towards a higher surcharge rate. So previously, if the earning was taxable earning was more than 5 cr, then people are required to pay a surcharge amount of 37%. Now, under this budget, this 37% rate of surcharge has been abolished. Now, there is only three surcharge rate applicable for new tax regime: the usual 10%, the higher 15%, and very high 25%. Right? This 25% of surcharge rate was applicable if your income is more than 2 cr, taxable income is more than 2 cr, but it is not crossing 5 cr. Now, if your income, taxable income is more than 2 cr, irrespective of how high it goes, your surcharge rate will remain at 25%. Now, over here in this slide, we are going to take a look at comparative analysis between the regimes. Right, over here we have three columns: the old regime, pre-budget new tax regime, and post-budget new tax regime. Right. Over here, to do this comparative analysis, we have done certain assumptions. Firstly, we are taking that my salary earning is 16 lakh rupees, right? Uh, there is a home loan going on, and for which I am claiming a deduction under section 24B, and to the maximum possible limit, that is 2 lakh rupees. Further, it is assumed that I have fully utilized my 80C deductions, my 80D deductions, and NPS contribution, my own and through my employer. Now, how this computation fares in? Now, under the old tax regime, firstly, I will be reducing the standard deduction, which will be 50,000 rupees, right? From there onwards, I will be reducing 2 lakh rupees of interest, right? Home loan interest, which will bring down my income to 13 lakh 50,000 rupees. Now, since I have utilized my 80C, 80D fully, so those amounts we will be reducing as well, right? So in total, I will be reducing 2 lakh on account of 80C and 80D. Further, I am contributing in NPS by myself, for which I can get a maximum deduction of 50,000 rupees. So after all these deductions, my income will be coming to 11 lakh rupees. Further, I am considering that I am paying in NPS through my employer. Now, this again has an impact under the new tax regime. Therefore, 50,000 will be my deduction amount. It can be higher because there is limit of 10% of my basic salary. However, it will be carted, it will be limited to 7.5 lakh rupees a year. I have taken a notional amount of 50,000 rupees to get to this computation, and my taxable income under the new tax regime is coming to 10 lakh 15,000 rupees. So, my taxable income is coming down by a significant margin as compared to the new tax regime. Now, pre-budget new tax regime, there is no deduction for standard deduction, there is no deduction for ATC, home loan interest or principal, nothing. Only one deduction is there, that is your NPS contribution made through employer, right? There will be a deduction of 50,000 rupees. So my total taxable income in this case, pre-budget new tax regime, will be 15 lakh 50,000 rupees. After the budget, since there will be a deduction of standard deduction amounting to 50,000 rupees, I will be taking that, and there will be a employer contribution in NPS. Again, we are considering it to be 50,000 rupees. So total my taxable income will be coming down to 15 lakh rupees. Now, pre-budget and post-budget, my total taxable income is not varying by that much of a margin. It is only varying by 50,000 rupees, right? However, because of the changes made in the budget, there will be a significant impact on taxes. How? Let's take a look in the next slide. Now, under the old tax regime, my total income is coming to 10 lakh 50,000 rupees because I have taken a lot of deduction. I have taken deduction for home loan, my ATC, the home loan principal, PEF, ELSS, what and what not. I have taken a benefit of medical insurance paid. I have taken deduction for NPS. All these things combined, bringing down my taxable income to 10.5 lakh rupees. Now, up to 2.5 lakh rupees, there is no taxes because the rate of tax is zero. From 2 lakh 50 to 5 lakh rupees, the rate of tax is 5%, which would make the taxable amount of 12,500. From 5 to 10 lakh rupees, the rate of tax is 20%. So the tax amount will be 1 lakh rupees, and remaining 50,000 rupees, the rate of tax is 30%, which will bring the total tax on that slab 15,000 rupees. Total income tax of 1,27,500 rupees. Now, on top of this, I need to add in health and education cess at the rate of 4% of the tax amount, which would make the total tax of 1,32,600. Now, if we compare this pre-budget new regime, there will be a tax saving of around 40,000. Why? Because again, there is no deduction. My income is, my taxable income is 15 lakh 50,000 rupees. Only benefit is the slab rates, right? And based on the slab rates, my total tax is coming to 2 lakh 2,500 rupees. And we need to add in health and education cess, which would be 8,100 rupees, totaling to tax liability of 2,10,600 rupees. Now, this situation has changed. This situation has changed after the budget. Now, what has happened is the rates are almost the same, but the income slab has been extended, right? So from 0 to 3 lakh rupees, the rate of tax is 0. Therefore, it will give me a 0 tax. From 3 lakh rupees to 6 lakh rupees of income, the rate of tax is 5%, which will give me a tax of 15,000 rupees. From 6 to 9 lakh rupees, there is a tax rate of 10%, which will give me 30,000 rupees of tax for that slab. From 9 to 12 lakh rupees, the slab changes. The rate of tax is 15%, so I will be paying 45,000 rupees for that slab. From 12 to 15 lakh rupees, again there is a slab change, and the rate of tax for that slab is 20%, which will give me 60,000 rupees of taxes. And finally, on the remaining amount, that is 50,000 rupees, right, I will be paying tax at the rate of 30%, which will bring my tax to 15,000 rupees, totaling to my income tax being computed at 1,65,000 rupees. Now, on this 1,65,000 rupees, I will be adding 4% of health and education cess, and which will bring my total tax liability to 1,71,600 rupees. Now, as compared to the pre-budget and post-budget new tax regime, there will be a tax saving of almost 40,000 rupees. So you see, the new tax regime after the budget has been made a little bit more interesting and beneficial for the taxpayers. However, even after that, the new tax regime is still beneficial. Sorry, old tax regime is still beneficial as compared to the post-budget new tax regime. If we can see that under the old tax regime, my tax is coming to 1,32,000 rupees, whereas under the new tax regime after the budget, my tax is coming to 1,71,000 rupees. So there is straight away tax saving of another 40,000 rupees or so. However, uh, the new tax regime is looking much more beneficial for the person who do not have any sort of investment, and the new tax regime will now become a valid point of conversation going forward. What else? What changes have been made under the budget? Firstly and foremostly, there has been change made in presumptive taxpayers. Now, presumptive taxpayers are uh, directed towards small businesses and professionals who are not salaried class of people. Now, two types of presumptive taxation system are present in India. One assigned for businesses, one assigned for professions. For businesses, if my turnover is not crossing a certain limit, in that case, depending on the mode of receipt and the time when we receive the money, you need to pay tax based on a profit percentage which is predetermined. Now, this predetermined profit margin needs to be applied on the total gross receipt or the turnover, right? Now, this act to the turnover for opting into presumptive taxation targeted for business used to be 2 CR. Now, the limit has been increased to 3 CR provided your cash receipt is not more than 5% of the total receipt or turnover. Similarly, for professionals, if your turnover is no more than 50 lakh rupees, this is pre-budget. If your turnover is no more than 50 lakh rupees, in that case you could have gone for presumptive taxation by declaring at least 50% of your profit upon the turnover. However, similar change has been made in this budget that if your cash receipt are not more than 5% of the total receipt, in that case, you can opt for presumptive taxation up till the turnover limit of 75 lakh rupees in a year. Now, there has been a change made in LTCG, long term capital gains. Now, long term capital gains in previous years, there has been no caps. But from now onwards, if you are investing the long term capital gains, there is a cap mentioned. These the two provisions that are getting impacted are Section 54 and 54F. Under Section 54, if you had sold a house property and invested the gains in purchase of another house property, in that case, your total gains would have been exempted from long-term capital gains taxes. Sorry. Now, limit has been placed for Section 54 so that if you are making a gain and if the gain is in excess of 10 CR, in that case, any gains that you are making beyond 10 CR will be taxable in your hand at the rate of long-term capital gains, that is 20%. Over and above that, you need to pay some surcharge and education cess as well. Section 54 was had workings similar to section 54. However, if you are selling off any asset which is not excuse me, which is not a immovable property, then if you had invested the entire amount of sale proceeds in purchase of another house property, in that case, your entire amount of gain would have been exempted from taxes. However, if you are investing a part of that sale proceeds, then the prorated, proportionate capital gains used to be exempted. Now, the similar 10 CR limit has also been placed. Therefore, maximum amount you can save from taxes is 10 CR. Thirdly, there has been a change in TDS provision which is applicable for online gaming. Before the budget, if your online winning, that had you taken part in online tournament or online contest, there used to be a tax deduction of 30% if your winning was more than 10,000 rupees. Now, regardless of the amount you are winning, TDS at the rate of 30% will be applicable on the withdrawal of the winnings. Therefore, even if you are winning 300 rupees, 400 rupees, or 1000 rupees, you can expect a TDS of 30% on that winning amount. There are some other changes made in this budget. For example, uh, firstly, if you had purchased a house property by taking a loan, you had this option to deduct amount of interest on that housing loan from your total income. However, uh, people used to take a little bit of leeway in this provision, right? People found a little leeway in this provision. What they used to do is, even though they are claiming a deduction of 2 lakh rupees, maximum up to 2 lakh rupees from their total income, they used to add up to the cost of acquisition of that house property the amount of interest they are paying, right? So this would have driven up the price of the house property by a great margin. And whenever they used to sell this house property, since the cost of acquisition, the purchase price of the house property was higher, their income tax gains, their long-term gains or short-term gains would have come down by a significant margin. Now, this was allowed because you were acquiring an asset by borrowing a sum, and you had the option to capitalize the interest expenses to acquire that asset. However, this loophole has been filled up by this year's budget, right? So now onwards, if you are taking any interest benefit under Section 24, the main section for claiming interest on house property, in that case, you are not allowed to deduct, or rather you are not allowed to include in the cost of acquisition of that same figure. Further, you are not allowed to add up to the cost of improvement for the house property. Further, this section will extend this amendment will extend to chapter 6A, which would mean if you have taken benefit under section 80 EEA, then also you cannot include the interest payment as cost of acquisition or cost of improvement. Finally, as of now, market linked debenture has been deemed to be a short term capital asset. Therefore, any gains arising from it, irrespective of its holding period, will be deemed to be short term capital gains, and it will be taxed at slab rate. There will not be any special rate or indexation benefit extended to it. It will consider to be a short-term capital gains, and appropriate rate of tax, that is slab rate tax, will be made applicable for it. Now we are at the end of our session. And if you have any question, we will be answering those. Right. We will be live for another 4 5 minutes. If you have any question, please drop them. Right. Since there are no question coming in, we will be concluding that session. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.